Hi, my name is Christina Lowery, and I have the great honor of leading Girl Rising, a global nonprofit working in 11 countries to change the way the world values girls and advance girls' right to a quality education. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate International Women's Day and Women's History Month. This year, the celebration feels different. COVID-19 has exacerbated already existing gender inequalities, leaving girls and young women particularly affected. Despite the risks and challenges, girls and young women around the world continue to make tremendous efforts in shaping a more equal future and leading the recovery from the pandemic. This is the power of educating girls. Today, you'll hear from women leaders in the field of technology, members of Girl Rising's international team, and 3 young women from India and Kenya who will share their spoken word poetry and stories of how they are using their voice and leading change in their own communities. We're also thrilled today to announce the launch of a new Girl Rising book, Dare to Dream, made in collaboration with our partner HP. It's a printed version of the stories of the 9 girls from the Girl Rising film. Each of these young women, in the face of adversity, dared to be courageous, determined, and resilient, and most importantly, they dared to dream. The book includes a foreword by Girl Rising friend and co-producer of our film and campaign in India, Priyanka Chopra. We'll share more about the book a little later in the event, and I hope you'll join us in the end for an interactive activity to use your voice and develop your vision for the future.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Judithe Registre, the Vice President of Programs here at Girl Rising. Thank you for joining us today. Last year, this time, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. At the time, none of us could have imagined how every area of our lives would be changed. This year, the UN's theme for International Women's Day, as we celebrate Women's History Month, is Women in Leadership, Achieving Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. And I'm so happy today to be here with my CEO, Christina Lowery, and Karen Kahn of HP to celebrate the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world as we carve not only new solutions to recover from COVID-19, but as we introduce new ways of doing things with women leading change. Can each of you introduce yourselves and explain a bit about HP and Girl Rising's work together?
I would love to, and thank you so much for having me, and happy International Women's Day, week, month. I look forward to this every year. So I'm the head of corporate affairs at HP, but I think my less official title is fangirl of Girl Rising. I am so deeply moved and inspired by the work that you do. And HP supports Girl Rising because we have a big goal around the digital divide, which is driving 100 million learning outcomes around the world by 2025. And we work with you because we love you, but we work with you because you are one of the most deep and broad organization that's driving direct impact for underrepresented girls and women around the world. And I think about this year, Judithe, as you mentioned, today we marked for HP the 1-year milestone of sending 55,000 people to work at home. And I think about the 5 million girls that you've touched this year through everything from your Slam Out Loud program of poetry and theater and these beautiful ways that you're helping girls to find the brightness and the light in the world, and the work that you're doing across Kenya and Pakistan and reaching people on WhatsApp and through radio and everything in between. We work with you because we just believe that when it comes to making an impact for girls and women, it's all about Girl Rising.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. And as Judithe said, I'm Christina Lowery. I have the great honor of leading Girl Rising. And gosh, 2021 marks the 6th year. It was 6 years ago that we began working with HP when we first launched our work in India. And I'm excited to talk about, I love always talking about all of our work together, but this last year it really has been about that theme that you mentioned, Judithe, creating an equal future. And with HP by our side, we have been able this last year to adapt our tools and curriculum and programming to this unprecedented year and to new circumstances in order to keep reaching young people, even when they're not in school, and to adapt our materials to new platforms to reach more people. So it is with great pleasure. I know we're a couple of weeks after International Women's Day, but we still are celebrating here at Girl Rising too, and excited to dive into this conversation, both to talk about what this year has been for girls and women around the world and the incredible examples of leadership we see. And then later we'll get to actually talk with some incredible young women from our programs.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear both from you because I know our work, but also how I think we've realized how the women and girls have been impacted by COVID-19. Gender inequality, gender economic inequality have seen the way that women, despite how impacted they are by crisis, we've also seen how they've made incredible decisions to actually lead across communities, across nation. We've seen from Australia to Thailand to New Zealand, the way women have been leading. Now, before we begin to share some of these stories, I think it's important to unpack some of the statistics. In 2020, 4 times as many women lost their jobs as men. And the data for girls are equally alarming. Now, Christina, before we get into sort of a deeper conversation to bridge the parallel between women and girls, could you speak about what the closure of schools have meant for your work, our work at Girl Rising, and how you're actually addressing some of those issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, UNICEF estimates that there are 11 million girls that were behind a desk in classrooms a year ago that will not go back. And that is on top of the 130 million girls that were already out of school. And around the world, we know at its height, 1.5 billion young people were affected by school closures. So the implications are huge. And there are many. There are, of course, many realities underneath those numbers. All over the world, there's been a loss of learning and probably more importantly, a mental health crisis and an emotional health crisis for both boys and girls. That's not unique to girls. But there are realities that girls face that boys do not. And I just want to talk about a few of those. When girls are out of school, they are much more vulnerable to sexual violence, to child marriage, to pregnancy. And I remember a really alarming statistic I heard last summer from the Kenyan government. And they estimated that there were 150,000 teen pregnancies since the pandemic began. And that was a 40% increase from the same period of time the previous year. And obviously that means for most of those girls, that is the end of their education road. And so when I think about the implications of these numbers, because it's hard to wrap our head around these numbers, the implication is that what's happening right now is going to have long-term effects for young people, and especially for girls when there is so much that gets decided in her adolescence. Another thing is that girls are much less likely to have access to technology and the devices that, while not the perfect way to substitute for in-person classrooms, has been the lifeline for so many young people this year. Girls are much less likely to have that. And also, their girls shoulder an unfair burden of domestic work. And this last year, the amount of that work has ballooned. I think UNICEF estimates that girls do 40% more work at home, unpaid work that's related to basic survival for families, cleaning, cooking, fetching water. That's 160 million hours a day, I think that was calculated that girls are spending on those things. Those are hours that are not spent, can't be spent on other things, on school, on studying. And this is something that actually is happening even when girls are in school. But this last year, the amount and the crisis has reached even new proportions. So it's something, it's important, I think, to understand these different layers, because as we devise solutions, we have to be aware of these particularities so we can make sure that those solutions can meet these girls where they are, and can take into account their full reality, so we can make sure that they can continue learning and be supported in choosing their futures.
And you know, Christina, there is a strong parallel to what you're describing and what we've seen in the workplace. Over the past year, there's an estimated 2.4 million women who have left the workplace. In the US, that's particularly true due to the care economy. This is compared to 1.8 million men. In January alone, we knew 275,000 women left the workplace. Now, Karen, as a woman who leads an organization that I think that is at the forefront of gender equality, HP has a strong commitment to inclusion, gender equality. I would love to hear from you how you at HP is addressing some of this parallel around girls getting out of school and the way we see women getting out of the workplace as a result of the same challenges that that Christina is highlighting here.
I mean, the numbers are staggering. And Christina, when we look at some of these numbers, the idea that 1/3 of the population of girls don't have access to modern technology, to access learning is not only staggering, but you realize the generational impact that this is going to have. It's not about, FY20 or FY21. It's going to have impact for years to come, and the impact that it's going to have in the workforce, whether it's in early career hires or women in engineering or women whose academic pursuits have been derailed because of this year, is, again, these are going to have longitudinal impacts for companies around the world. For us, for women, there are a number of trends that we're seeing that, as a large employer, we look at really carefully, things like flexibility and location strategy, and knowing that, your office is your kitchen table, or your office might be, crouched in a corner somewhere trying to find a quiet moment, in between pandemic parenting. So we know that we have to be extraordinarily flexible in how people work, and when people work, and where people work, and our methods of goals and performance are just very different. They're going to be much more individualized. And we also look at our location strategy, and we believe that this is going to have a fundamental change in the way people work. And we talk about, the new hybrid model. For many, many people across corporate America and across the world, we're never going to go back to offices the way that we did, because real estate is so expensive. And we realize, at a company of our size, if you can send 55,000 people home, literally overnight, and you can still perform, do you really need all that office space? Can you help people to create solutions in their home environments? Because people don't actually want to work in the office anymore in the way that we used to work and sit behind a desk all day. It's not healthy. They say that sitting behind a desk for 10 hours a day is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes. It's not really the way people work. The other focus for us has really been around mental health. And we've always had a commitment to mental health, and we've provided everything from, online services, yoga, dance parties, counseling, mentoring. I mean, everything that you can possibly think of to just help people to, not go, entirely off the rails based on, what this year at home has been like and how stressful it is, whether you're a parent or a caretaker, or you've taken in multiple people to be in your home and everybody is trying to be on Wi-Fi at the same time. And then, this year, in addition to the pandemic, has been a year of, a racial awakening and the focus on eliminating systemic racism. This has also been a big part of our year, and gender equity. We're heartened here in the U.S. to know that the Gender Policy Council now reports directly to our brand new president, although it'd be nice if it reported to our brand new vice president, who's both a woman of color and a woman. But we just see that, racial and gender issues have a seat at the table as they should, but it doesn't make it any easier. The numbers are really alarming.
So I want to come back to the theme of today's conversation and bring Christina back on the table to look at how else could we be working to bridge the leadership gap between women and girls. We know COVID-19 has impacted girls' education in such a way that they are being pulled out of school. But what are the ways we can actually ensure them going back to school? And what are the technologies that we've both been talking about, the role of technology, both in at home with work, but also in the education system. Christina, I wonder if you could sort of talk a little bit about our work with girls and how we are approaching the different ways of engaging adolescent girls, both using media and other forms of technology.
Yeah, sure. As Karen said, this has just been we've all had to shift and rework and figure out how we're going to do our work from different places and meet people who are also in different spaces, right? Up until last year, almost all of Girl Rising's programming was training teachers to work with kids in classrooms, in-person kinds of settings, both in educational and non-educational settings. So one of the things that is so important now in both kids who are still out of school, but when schools reopen in many places, is we have to meet people where they are, right? We have to figure out how to meet kids where they are. One of our programs in Guatemala, we knew that the population of young women that we worked with didn't have access to technology that would allow them to connect. And so we turned our curriculum into a radio program. We've also in other places created printed at-home learning guides. And we're about to, in partnership with HP, have a whole other printed booklet and curriculum that's able to be delivered to people's homes. And so one thing I think as we are kind of building back is really making sure we're all thinking about how do we meet young people where they are. If there are young women who are now pregnant, how do you make sure that that's not the end of their educational road? How can schools be built and adapt to the needs of pregnant teens and then when they have their kids as well? Secondly, I think education has to change. Karen, just like you said, there's been this, realization of mental health and needing to address mental health. I do think that one of the bright spots that I see is that governments are recognizing that things that used to be kind of nice to haves in education, social emotional curriculum, things that address mental health are now seen as must-haves, right? Those were the things that schools are were so determined this year to keep connected to kids. It's not necessarily to make sure that they, got to the next level of math. That's not saying that academics, especially basic literacy and numeracy, aren't of paramount importance. But I do think that school, the definition of what it means to receive a quality education is changing and needs to continue changing. and then across the board curriculum that addresses social emotional health in kids, 21st century skills, gender equity, racial equity are things that have to be incorporated into curriculum. And then lastly, connected to what we were talking about girls taking more of a burden of housework, women taking more a burden of housework, is continuing to change gender norms that disadvantage girls and don't allow them to succeed, stand in the way of their really being able to invest themselves in education. So we are continuing to do that work, both with our educational programming with kids, with our work with teachers and teaching them how to teach kids in the classroom, regardless of their gender or background, as well as our new media content that we're creating that is all around also recognizing the positive benefits of educating girls and what we all need to do to create a more gender equal world.
Karen, can I ask you to comment a little bit about, I think it's been fascinating to see how HP has looked at technology, but also taking into consideration, not everyone have access to technology. You've taken a leadership role in supporting printing materials that Christina have explained. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen this as being critical to learning outcomes, especially during COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that this year, when we created this program called Turn to Learn, and we've partnered with people like Time and NASA to, we're obviously, we're a PC and a printer company, and we've long been advocates for printed materials, but actually getting, like 230,000 printed documents out to underrepresented communities just to help kids learn, continue to stay connected has been enormously important to us. We've also seen this phenomenon of, we've always said PCs are critical and we should have one PC per household, but it's one PC per person. But technology is expensive, and it's expensive for people to have those kinds of devices in their home. And so working with companies like HP to figure out how do you bring these costs down, and how do you create less expensive ways and places and ways to manufacture technology that's closer to where people need it. And for us, we have this sort of 3-pillar strategy in bridging digital equity. It's around access to educate, using technology for access to education, access to healthcare, and ultimately access to better economic outcomes. And I think one of the things that we've seen so directly from Girl Rising, and one of the areas of your mission that we find hugely compelling, is the idea of leveraging education and economic opportunities to elevate people out of poverty and to stop food insecurity. And so ultimately we look at all these things as ways for us to, deliver on our own mission as a company, which is technology at the intersection of humanity. And it's been an interesting year for us. We've decided to take our technology at the beginning of the pandemic and do totally different things with it that we never thought that we could. We took our 3D printers and we started printing PPE. We didn't realize that we would be printing like 5 million face masks. Or we turned one of our print facilities that actually is an ink chemistry lab in Puerto Rico into producing hand sanitizer. Like so many brands just decided to use their own technology and use their facilities to do entirely different things, to just take a stand and try and help the world out of this very dark period. And I love the work that we were able to do with Girl Rising. I think that you guys are enormously nimble and creative, and anything that brands can do to be nimble and creative to support underrepresented groups. It's not just a nice thing to do. These things are business imperatives for corporations. They are absolutely business imperatives for the next generation and the next generation of labor, because it's the next generation of labor is not going to come from the United States. It's going to come from India. It's going to come from Southeast Asia. It's going to come from Africa. And that's why we need organizations like Girl Rising.
Your comment about the next generation ties so nicely with what's coming up next, and a wonderful conversation we're going to have with some young leaders from our program. But it also is, for me, what I saw this year and that stand out as the truly bright spots. And we see the next generation. We have seen countless examples of the girls that are in our programs and in our partners programs, and they are the ones that are seeing needs in their community and standing up and figuring out how to meet those needs. We have this amazing young woman, Barlin, from our partner Big Picture Learning, and she lives in an informal settlement in Nairobi, and noticed that the elderly people in her community didn't know enough about how to stay safe and needed basic supplies. And she organized herself and organized her community and organized her friends to go out and procure goods and go door to door and serve those elderly people in her community. And Judithe and I could go on and on with different examples that we have seen of girls themselves, of teachers, also who, a big shout out to the teachers of last year who truly are my heroes. But I think even better than us talking about them is getting to hear directly from them, which we'll get to do here in just a moment.
I'm unsure. I'm unsure if my past is a chapter of history or political science. The scars on my body are the survivors of a tragedy called time. My heart and brain is a catacomb. Many ideas and feelings die before they're even born. I've started coughing depression, sneezing anxiety, bleeding fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of looking myself into the mirror, as if all my phobias buried deep down in myself will rise like stalagmite. If I catch a gaze of my own reflection, all my insecurities want to cheer up at the top of my lungs. And between all this while, I have forgotten how does it feel like when the sun kisses at the back of your neck, when the hair brushes from my face, or the moon slowly and steadily rises from the east of my body. The balmy days of late summers, the bracing air of early winters, and all my pleasing memories, soft and musky like the smell of spring, had set somewhere in the west of my body. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. To introduce myself again, I'm Christina Lowery. I have the great honor of leading Girl Rising. I'm joined here today by three amazing young women who each are using their voice to raise issues in their community, to shape their futures, and we are really excited to have you with us today. I'm also so pleased to be joined by Richa Hingorani, our country program manager in India. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Christina. I'm so glad to be here, and especially to be joined by these three very inspiring girls. We have Muskan and Jyoti from our partner Slam Out Loud's program, and we're also joined by Mary, who's a part of our program with the Sanpa Trust in Kenya. Can I request all three of you to please briefly introduce yourselves? Muskan, let's start with you.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Muskan. I'm from Slam Out Loud, and I'm a spoken word poet. I am a student in 11th grade, and I'm really excited.
Great, thanks. Maddie?
I'm Mariatiano. I'm 12 years old in Standard 6 at St. Stephen Educational Center in Kibera constituency. I live with my parents and siblings in Kisumu Ndogo.
Thank you. Jyoti?
Hi everyone, I'm Jyoti and I'm a spoken word poet at Slam Out Loud, and currently I'm studying in grade 12 pursuing liberal arts, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm extremely glad to be a part of this conversation today with all of you.
Thank you so much. We're all equally honored to actually be hosting all three of you, especially after the year that we've had, which has, of course, been very, very extraordinary. And of course, this has been especially difficult for girls because of the challenges that have stemmed from the pandemic. We're so glad to learn that you're all so determined to support your peers and communities as well. Jyoti, tell us what prompted you or what inspired you to use your voice?
Since childhood, I think I really loved art. And when I was a kid, then it was in the form of dancing or doing theater or playing or maybe drawing, at which I was never good at. But that's something that I really enjoyed was coloring. So I used to, through these art forms, I started expressing myself. And then gradually in grade 7th, I was introduced to slam poetry. And then I realized that there's something that, was always within me, but I couldn't express myself or explore myself. And I believe through spoken word poetry, I was really able to do that. And as when I started writing spoken word poetry, I realized that it has been a means of to express my voice, find myself, and believe in myself. And hence, I think on the journey of as I was on the journey of self-exploration, I could really, realize the self-importance and really believe in myself. And that's how I think I started using my voice for others. That I realized that there's something that I always felt like expressing, maybe the things that I never shared with everyone. And so I felt there are many others who are yet not able to do and who hasn't really find their voice. And maybe I can be their voice, or maybe an instrument through which they can express. And that's how I find my voice.
And I think that's the entire beauty of using an art form, such as poetry, music, and dance. You're actually able to express yourself, you're able to make connections, you're also able to support mental health. And I know that, Muskan, you're also a poet, and that both you and Jyoti are actually collaborating on creating a program for other young members in the community to address that very need. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so we've been working on this program called Gurukul. So Gurukul is basically a Hindi word for a school where you learn all these artistic, like all these art forms and expressive mediums. So yeah, so that is what, so initially Jyoti started Gurukul and then I came on board last year. And last year was a roller coaster journey for all of us because there was, because we all were forced to stay inside our homes and we couldn't go out. And generally Gurukul sessions used to take place in a community center. So it was a sudden shock to us because we couldn't continue to go to the community center. We could not continue sessions. So then we decided to, we decided to shift to online platforms. And then we started, collaborating with multiple artists and organizations to ensure that children from disadvantaged communities have access to art-based education and all these extracurricular activities.
Can you tell us a little bit, Mary, about how the pandemic has affected your community?
It has affected our community because the parents, they don't have enough money to buy food. Some just go beg at the pavement areas, and that's not pleasant. It's not great.
And I understand that you are part of Sunflower, a program with one of Grow Rising's partners, Sunflower Trust. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with Sunflower Trust?
At Sunflower, we are taught literacy and also how to use computers. And it is also fun, having friends all there, then helping you to do what you don't know. It's fun.
That's great. And I understand that you have gone through the Grow Rising program as part of your work with Sunflower. Were there any of the stories that really stood out to you? Any of the girls' stories that that you really liked and that you found inspiring?
Yes. Azmera and Ruxana.
And tell me why you liked them. What stood out for you?
I was inspired by Asmera because when she was the mother chose that she had to get married, the brother came and stood for her. And so they all came together and she was not married. She was taken back to school.
Yeah, I love that part too. One of the reasons I love it so much is sometimes I think when we talk about girls' education, we don't often talk about what it is that boys can do, what our brothers can do to support us. I'd be curious actually to hear from each of you if you had a message for your brothers and your classmates who are boys and the boys of the world about girls' education and what you all are doing and sharing your voice. What would you say to them? What would your message be?
To girls was to that they should speak themselves out, because if they don't speak themselves up, they might get no justice, and their rights will not be followed, because they think that girls cannot make it. But what they don't know is that a girl, if you educate a girl, you can change the world and you can make the world a better place.
Beautifully spoken. Thanks, Mary. Jyoti, what about you? Do you have what's your message to the boys of the world and how they can be involved?
I think gender has always played a very huge role in my life. I see is one of the way through which gender plays a role in whatever I believe, and hence I feel like boys have. I felt like as being a girl, I was always discriminated maybe at home, and I always felt like my brothers are always enjoying the privileges and maybe not in the very right way, because none of them are studying right now. So maybe I think the only message that I think I would like to maybe give, and I would want them to hear, is that all of us are equal, and at the end of the day, before being a girl or a boy, we are human beings and we have got this life. And hence, as being just human beings, we need to support each other instead of discriminating each other on any grounds. So I think equality is something that I would really, really want them to know, learn, and teach them through actions.
Muskan, I would actually love to ask you how you think other girls could also use their voice. Is there any message that you would also want to give to them as means to just encourage other forms of art and storytelling?
I think stories play a very crucial role in our lives. And I think that, we have multiple stories to tell. Powerful, sad, happy, all those, like stories of all genres. And I think it's just that, when you raise your voice or when you try to, achieve something, always, operate with this mindset or with this ideology that I'm not trying to fight against someone, but with someone. Like I think it should be a revolution for all. So yeah, just I think somewhere, maybe using different art forms to express yourself. Yeah, and also having, and also thinking on both the perspectives, not only yours.
I have another question. I'm going to start with Mary. Mary, I understand that you are really dedicated to school and really committed to your education. What inspires you? Where did that dedication come from?
What had been inspiring me to dedicate myself to education was when I realized that, yes, there's something that I can do and I can do something better. So I decided that I should work hard and aim high so that one day I can be great.
Well, you're a wonderful role model. I like that. Work hard and aim high. I'm going to write that and put it on my computer so I can see it every day. Jyoti and Muskan, what do you ascribe your dedication to your schooling to be from? Where do you find your source of inspiration?
I find a lot of inspiration within the system. I think my teachers and my classmates, all of them are really, really inspirational. I think somewhere also, like maybe the struggles that I'm facing right now and, and the achievements that I'm looking to, I think they play a very crucial role in my, in my journey, and they give me a lot of inspiration, and all my role models, all, like all these poets. Yeah, I think they're really, really inspirational.
What about you, Jyoti?
I think I really connect with Mary and what Muskan really said, that, I think as I was, so initially I had to struggle to study, and my parents had to really work hard and convince their parents that, so that they can let me go to school, because, I was a girl at home and I'm the eldest one. So they didn't send me to school initially for 4 years, and then my parents convinced them. So it was a long journey, and my parents narrated everything to me, whatever happened in the home. So I think all of those experiences, and how my parents always wanted to study, how always they wanted their life to be better, and what they dream, inspires me every day. And as Muskan said, within the system there are so many things. There's the cycle of poverty that everyone wants to break and go beyond that and explore themselves. They don't want to be restricted by things, and hence I feel like the system and the experiences shaped me at home and inspired me to study and work hard and aim better, as Mary said.
As everyone knows, we're having this conversation today in celebration of International Women's Day. It happened a couple of weeks ago, but the whole month is Women's History Month. And all over the world, people are celebrating this month. Women and girls raising their voices, working hard in their communities, and leading through this very challenging time. And all three of you are doing that in incredibly inspiring ways and are true role models for all of us. And I wondered if each of you have a message for the world. What is it that you want people to know about the reality that you as a young woman are facing, and other girls, and what you think needs to be done in order for you and the girls of the world to be supported, to, as you just said, Mary, to aim high and be supported in following your dreams?
You have a big future and you must work hard. Don't listen to myths and rumors or gossips. Believe to yourself, because what a man can do, a woman can do it better. And you will believe in it only if you work hard and aim hard, and you can do whatever you want. Don't listen to anything that anyone tell you. Believe in yourself and do whatever you want that is good for you.
That is good advice. Muskan, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think most importantly, be very inclusive and aware of what you're saying and what you're doing. Because I remember I was studying pol science a few days back, and there was a chapter around executive and what are the powers of a president in India. And I noticed that it was written that he can do this, he can do that, as if we are never going to have a female president ever. So yeah, I think like a pol science book is saying that and delivering that message is really, really painful. So I think we all need to be very, very inclusive and aware of what we are saying, maybe use the right terminologies, and always think about everybody and not just your own perspective.
I agree. Very, very important. Richa, what about you? Do you have any last words?
Yes, I think the only thing that I would actually want to say that I feel that the future is in safe hands with Muskan, Mary, and Jyoti leading the way. I am so overwhelmed by all of what you have shared here today. I literally have goosebumps as you spoke about dreams, about stories, about believing in yourself, about being inclusive. I really think that we don't have to look beyond this Zoom conversation for role models at all. The three of you are brilliant role models that I'm sure that I'm going to be looking at for the foreseeable future. And I'm very, very invested in how your future is going to turn out to be. And of course, Girl Rising is going to be your loudest and cheerleader.
Thank you so much. And before we leave, we would love to close with Muskan with a poem by you. Thank you again all for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. I think I had a really great time listening to all of you. I'll just recite a poem about poetry. I really, really enjoy being a spoken word poet, and this is poem. This is a tribute to that. Yeah. Here's a list of reasons why I became a poet. 1, because poetry is history. Poetry is reviving history. Poetry is re-singing songs, songs of freedom, songs of love and empathy, songs of courage and dreams. 2, because poetry is asking for what you deserve and not accepting what's given to you. Poetry is asking questions and looking for answers. Poetry is building a home. 3, because poetry is a journey that never ends. Writing a new poem is like saying, wait a minute to your favorite song playlist and looking for something new that could be a part of it. 4, you never use your metaphors twice, no matter how much you love them. 5, because poetry is like holding hope in your hands, both of them. Poetry is like cuddling with freedom. 6, because looking for metaphors is like finding happiness. And funny how it is hard to find both even when they exist in the smallest chunks of life. 7, because poetry is like coming out of your nutshell that you've always called your home. Poetry is leaving home and then coming back to it. 8, because it is always easier to write about heartbreaks than feel them. 9, because this world feels like living in a paper boat. And we all know that one day it will sink. And when it will sink, the paper will surreptitiously dissolve and there will be no sign of a sunken boat, just like there is no sign of an unheard voice, of a scream, and of dead bodies. No sign of a burnt building which was once called a home. So I live in my poems and I know when my boat will sink, people will recite poems and sing songs at my funeral. Because poetry is building a boat that reminds us of its existence even after it sinks.
Thank you all so much for joining us to celebrate International Women's Day and the incredible young women and girls who are using their voices to connect us, inspire us, and make our world a better place. And today I'm so thrilled to announce the release of our new Girl Rising book titled Dare to Dream, made in collaboration with our partner HP. Dare to Dream shares the stories of the 9 girls from the original Girl Rising film. And these girls are synonymous with determination, grit, and courage. With a foreword by Priyanka Chopra Jonas, Dare to Dream aims to inspire with stories, do-at-home activities, and poems from young girls in our program partner, Slam Out Loud and Milan Foundation's programs, including poetry from Muskan, who you just got to meet. Dare to Dream will first be distributed in India and soon will be available for download on our website. We hope that this book will inspire everyone to use their voice for change toward a more gender equal world. There's so much all of us can do, but I want to encourage 3 actions now. The first, support girls and young women in their leadership journeys. Mentor rising leaders, talk to girls about careers, especially careers that have typically been underrepresented by women. Use our resources available on our website to talk to young people, boys and girls both, about gender issues. Support organizations that are fighting for quality education for girls around the world. We would be honored if you supported Girl Rising. And there are many other worthy organizations who are unleashing the promise of girls. Finally, you all had a chance to hear from Muskan today. Join us in celebrating the power of girls' voices by reading Muskan's poem here and participating in the activities shared in Dare to Dream. You can share your reflections directly here in the chat. Thank you again so much for joining us today.